How do we make good decisions in difficult times? How do we deal with stressful moments? How do we deal with our emotions screaming at us, but our minds needing to think clearly? David's example is wise to us, and so I would like to talk about it briefly before we go and serve the Lord today. There's a slide that's coming up that basically talks about the root of wisdom. Number one root of wisdom is God. Listen to what the Proverbs chapter 3, verse 18 and 19 says. By wisdom the Lord laid the earth's foundations. By understanding he set the heavens in place. By his knowledge the deeps were divided, and the clouds let drop the dew. Only God had the wisdom, not some amoeba, not some single-cell entity, not some reptile with no legs who somehow imagined what it would be like to have legs and eventually evolved into a land-walking person. God had the wisdom to lay the earth's foundations and to make it what it is today. Now that's wisdom beyond our own understanding and comprehension. We're still trying to figure it all out. So number one, the root of wisdom is God. Number two is our response to this wisdom of God's. The people's response, Proverbs 9, 10, and 11. The fear of the Lord, meaning the reverence of him, the respect of him that's profound and honorable, is the beginning of wisdom. In other words, you can be the sharpest tack in a classroom, but if you don't fear God, if you don't love him, respect him, honor him, you're not wise whatsoever. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. For through me is wisdom. Through this kind of wisdom, your days will be many, and your years will be added to your life. In other words, wise people tend to live a bit longer, just like even medical studies say those who pray tend to heal better or get well sooner, or so on and so forth. So real quickly, as our way of applying this today, how did David react to unfairness and seek wisdom in our own lives now? Well, a couple examples. Number one, how did David act wisely? He did not repay evil with evil. That's a New Testament saying as well in Romans chapter 12. He did not repay evil with evil. In other words, here's Saul. Can you imagine the king? You're in his house. You're his musician. You play to calm him down. He gives his daughter to you in marriage and welcomes you. But he's also very jealous of you. He knows that God is with him, meaning David. And he tries to throw a spear on a number of occasions right through the midsection of his son-in-law, David. What is David's response to that? He is the anointed one, isn't he? He's the one who has the rightful place on the throne, so what does he do? Well, he doesn't repay the evil with evil. In fact, he runs from evil. There's a couple of instances real quick. In the 19th chapter, you'll notice, verses 9 and 10 of 1 Samuel. But an evil spirit from the Lord came upon Saul as he was sitting in his house with a spear in his hand while David was playing the harp. Saul tried to pin him to the wall with his spear, but David eluded him as Saul drove the spear into the wall. Just got out in the nick of time. And so that night, David made good his escape. He ran. He had to run. Jesus' lessons in the Sermon on the Mount include this: love your enemies, pray for those who persecute you. And even though sometimes the prophets took it on the chin from people who didn't believe what they're saying, you're going to take it on the chin for living such good lives among the non-believers, the world, that even though they should falsely accuse you and I of all the kind of silly stuff they can, in the end you are glorifying God on the day he visits us. So it is Peter's lesson that David is already doing. He is not repaying evil for evil. He is not getting prideful. Oh, he tried to kill me, I'm going to go kill him. Or I'm going to set a trap for him. Or I'm going to poison his wine. Or I'm going to do something diabolical just to get this man off my back. And so he stays calm. The second thing we notice in this whole thing about David's response and why he acted wisely and why he's called successful is that, again, he ran from that which was wrong. Sometimes things are just wrong in our lives. Fools rush into wrong-headedness, but wise people, like all of you, I hope, don't rush in at all. One of the worst temptations in life is trying to fit in the junior high or middle school called here, or high school. You want to find an in crowd, you want to fit in, you want to do that in college, you want to do that in the workplace. And all depends on how wise we are as to what crowd we will mess with, what crowd we will become friends with. And kids, let me tell, oftentimes kids become drug addicts not because of something that they're born to be, it's because they want to fit in somewhere. And kids can be so cruel by excluding others because of different economic backgrounds or the way a child looks or acts. A lot of kids are becoming homosexuals and lesbians because they're trying to fit in. It's not because they're predisposed to being that way. They're just looking for friendships. Now, David ran away. David ran from the wrong because he didn't want to just be included in the kingdom of Saul. He didn't want to just fit into this palace. He didn't want to do whatever it takes to have all the treasures of Israel. In other words, to be Paris Hilton and realize your riches can really defeat you, and to walk away from that in order to lead a wise life and not get in trouble anymore would be a tough decision. It's exactly what David did. I can't stick around here. My life's in peril. I can't just treasure the opulence. I've got to get rid of that thought and move on and protect my life. 1 Corinthians 10:13 says, "But when you are tempted, He, God, will also provide a way out." The word for way out is escape. That's exactly what David did. My father-in-law's evil. He's demented. There's something wrong with him. And so he escaped and left rather than tempt fate on himself. Proverbs 14:16, "A wise man fears the Lord and shuns evil, but a fool is hot-headed and reckless." So run. Any situation in your life where you're starting to find out it's leading you down the wrong path, run from it. Flee from it. Walk away from it. Finally, how did David act wisely in all these chapters of 1 Samuel? Really, in the end, he left room for God to act. Please turn to chapter 24. Again, Saul is after his life. There's numerous accounts of Saul going after him. Even times when Saul gathers the whole army of Israel to get David. But he left room for God to act. Again, Romans 12 says, leave room for God's vengeance. Vengeance is His, it's not ours. This requires patience and trust in God. Essentially, it would take David 10 years to get Saul off his back and to become the true king of Israel. 10 years of running away from his evil father-in-law. 10 years to become the rightful king that he is. And so he had to have patience and trust, and it was called successful. It was called wise, even though life was not easy. And so in the chapter 24, just verse 24 if you wish. No, that's the wrong verse. I'm sorry, I repeated myself. David here is once again being pursued. He is asking for Saul to understand. He's having a face-to-face with Saul after having a chance to kill Saul. He doesn't take it. And then finally, in verse 12 of chapter 24, he says to Saul, "May the Lord judge between you and me." Meaning, I have patience to see who God sees as right here. "And may the Lord avenge the wrongs you have done to me, but my hand will not touch you. I will not pay evil for evil. I will not do wrong. I'd rather flee from it. As the old saying goes, from evil doers come evil deeds, so my hand will not touch you." Isn't that hard to do? Imagine walking away from somebody who's challenging your pride, from somebody who really wants you to do something wrong, and you want to just fit in. They've been your friend, but now they're trying to lead you in a different way you know is wrong, and to be able to walk away from it and leave room for God to act in your life, to bring about justice.